Hey, I'm Jeff. I have two countries in the Socium project and occasionally do one shots with the murder hobo. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
My name is John, and I've been work doing things with the Murder Hobo for a little while now, maybe a year and a half too. And I do Socium also. I am a DM most of the time. You can find me at Virtual Adept on just about any community online having to do with role playing games, such as Instagram would be another one. Virtual Adept on Instagram.
Sure. So I'm going to vamp until Frank comes back, is what I just heard. I'm Jason. I'm with the Margoo campaign on Sundays. Play Copious Volbitters the third, and then various one shots. Have DM'd at least once, I think, on Murder Hobo, and DM'd for a variety of game systems over the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years. But have been involved with the Socium project since it began with a couple of nations. So excited to participate.
We're going to discuss Tar and we're going to discuss the port city of Harmony up at the north. So that's the northern port for the country. The city itself is equally distributed between the different races, the Mutars, Centaurs, humans, elves, dwarfs. There's other ones as well, but they make up less than 10% of that town. The city's kind of divided in districts, and then each district is kind of populated by one of the races. So, like the Blue Orchids district, that's a newer district, and that's predominantly human. So, why people would be coming to Harmony is that's going to be like an entry point into the country and for excursions going towards Mount Firehead and the Citadel of Eternal Wisdom. And so, what people would do, they would get provisions, equipment, and then they would follow. There's a river called the Misty River that kind of goes by Jubilee, and then from there they would go to those two places. Um, the other thing with the Harmony is it has a very large market for magical items, stuff that they found in the mountains and at the Citadel. And then it's also a fishing community. And so, centaurs are not known for being fishermen. So, a lot of the bipedal, like the dwarves, elves, and humans would be the fishing. But the city of Harmony has contracted with the Brenda family from Esterins to help protect them from the sea from their neighbor. So they have
What?
I know. Well, you got to get some angry buffalo people to whoop off on your neighbors. So, and then, yeah.
Yes.
So, and then the city guards are mostly centurions, and then there's other races. A few like in the Blue Orchard district, they kind of have the humans and half elves, and they've actually that part of the district. Um, they've actually kind of made it to where only like if there's two-story buildings, they've made it where only humans are able to get in there easily. Most of the city is just one story. So that is Harmony. So the Harmony is actually, well, the whole country itself is kind of like a tribal chiefdom. And so Harmony's actually all the districts, they basically vote for the mayor. And right now it's currently a human named Hagar. And I know Hagar the homely is not very good looking, but there's also there's kind of rumors that he kind of used some money from humanity to kind of bribe people to be able to get in there. And he's been trying to push to have more humans come into the town to try to make them the majority. And then there's, I know, and there's also one of the merchant town from my other country, Paradise, that's set up a trading post in Harmony, which they're human as well. So there's a little bit of conflict between that with the centaurs, since they've been, predominantly the ruling of all the cities.
So how do the people from Paradise get along with the bull Minotaur guy?
Neighborhoods.
It's kind of like, repeat,
To make up another story.
like,
Huh. What are you broadcasting through, Frank?
yeah, I think I pretty much finished.
So now I'm curious though. Is there any resentment to the centaurs from the races that are inside within the city? Because it seems like that heavy-handed patrol would just engender some conflict at some level.
There's probably the conflict is probably like the human, because the whole country itself, the majority are centaurs, and then you also have the cow, the mutars. So those, I know, mutars, but they're a little bit more, they're not as militant as the centaurs are. So,
and can you just describe the mutar? I've heard the mutars in previous social projects, but describe it for me if you can.
So it's basically the bottom half of a cow, and then the upper part is a human.
And solely cows, regardless of gender. I mean, there's not like steers, mutars that are steers.
Well, there are male, female. Obviously, they would need that to,
Well, I don't know. It's magical world, right? I I know. I'm not going to try to milk that thing, so it doesn't matter one way or the other.
Well, if you watched the previous one, we talked about their ale, Mooheiser.
Wow. Okay, I think I have my head out of my ass now. Yeah, I do. Sorry, folks. There's something wrong with the audio on my end, but the important thing is these guys have got it. Yeah, your Anheuser-Busch reference hasn't cost us any problems yet. Any other questions? Go ahead.
What about Molson Golden? Would that make you any better?
Now you're going into Seinfeld region. Any other questions for Jeff on Harmony?
I want to know if I can have Mutars outside of Harmony and your nation and be in one of my nations. That's my only question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's my Rawson.
That wasn't me.
Not me.
Well, see, and you know what? I think that begs the point. Jeff, you've got a great export right here in your people. We know that you're already a slave trader in the South. You might as well just continue it on in the North.
No,
Go ahead.
This is the nice country, Well, the other one's nice too, as long as you're not the slave.
Nice. John, you're up next. Which country do you want to talk about first?
We're going to talk about Humany, which is right there.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the capital city, which is just a little bit below where you were, Bastion.
There you go.
So Bastion is a rather large city. I don't know if I would say maybe it probably has roughly 1 million people living there, maybe a little more. It has large areas of parks and really kept very clean. It has vastly huge mosques, and they look very similar to Tel Aviv mosques, if you've ever seen pictures of that. Or Istanbul. They're similar to the ones there too. It has large domes. Now, in the main part of the city, that's would be called the Temple District. There's a walled city within the city, and in the walled city within the city, there's this very, very large tower. The tower probably is a couple of football fields long, and it's square. It's like this big square tower that goes up about at least maybe 600 feet, maybe higher. And it is actually within inside it. There is another tower. Well, there's two. There's like this outer tower that's really big. And inside that, there's another tower that's just a little bit smaller that is doesn't go as high. And then within that is the original tower. And in that original tower, it's ancient. That tower, no one knows how old it is. It is clearly a lot older than the country itself. And inside that tower is where the portal that goes to the other world that we talked about, where the original humans were from. And so that is a very closely guarded thing. Like, that's why there's so much security around it, and why they built towers around the tower and such. So they don't want anybody to be able to come in and use that portal. Or perhaps they don't want whatever's coming out of that portal to be able to get out of that portal. No one really knows. But there is no public access to the portal. It's closely guarded secret of the Church of Ig. And the people that worship Ig, they have a lot of rules. They have a lot of it's a very structured religion that has lots and lots of different things they have to do. I mean, every morning you'll see people getting up to do their morning prayers, and they'll face the tower, and then they do this chanting where they do various chants that are like prayers. I was going to do one, but I kind of forgot the lyrics in it. Might be too trite.
Boo!
Sorry. And then, and the other thing is, the bastion sits on top of a very large complex of tunnels that are not naturally formed. They're basically ancient dungeons that this whole city sits on top of. And under these dungeons, there's a lot of the underground. And at one time, I think I mentioned in the history, there was an uprising of the werefolk where they tried to take over the country. And so there are still werefolk living in these tunnels underneath the city that they send down. Now the church sends down knights to try to go like clear out the tunnels as much as they can, but there's just too many different ones, and there's portals under there too that can bounce you around, so they don't have it mapped out very good. So there's still plenty of the nefarious non-humans living underneath Bastion. Not to mention, since a lot of them are werefolk, you can't always figure out who are who. So,
John, just in terms of the tunnels, if I just have a question because I'm picturing your tunnels almost like this labyrinth of tunnels beneath. What were the tunnels? Did you say they were built for a specific purpose, or are they just in ruins?
So they're basically the ruins of buildings and streets of city that got built on top of.
Okay.
Essentially, when maybe at some point, if you get deep enough down, there might be some actual purpose to it all. But the city itself is built on this huge mound, and so it's really just the rubble of other cities that were there before Humany was even a country.
And do we know the race of the previous inhabitants? If the Humany folks came from another world?
I don't really know. Could be they were humanoid. That's a good question. I haven't actually put any thought into that.
Is everything proportioned for humanoid though?
Well, right before Humany came, the humans came. It was the Mutars, right? And so they may have been in the upper levels of those dungeons, but I'm not sure that they really build cities because they're kind of nomadic. So it could have just been like kobolds or some other race that lived here, or even humans, who knows, that were there before the humans from the other world came through.
Who's the mayor, John? Or no, it's the religious leader, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Pope himself, it would be the ruler of this city and also the entire nation. And I forgot his name. I have it written down in one of the documents.
Wasn't it Urban? I can't remember, but
okay, I don't remember. But he's kind of a jerk. Yeah, to put it lightly. He's somewhat racist. Just somewhat.
Somewhat. Yikes. Yeah, he's somewhat racist, and Jeff's southern country is a little bit slaver. You guys are like rock and roll. Jeff, you got any questions for John on Humany?
I do not.
Sure. That's the layout you're going to see right before your TARS take over. Now, folks, there's a lot of rivers in Humany, but because of the way the map's laid out, you can't see it. John, correct me if I'm wrong, Bastion is on a river, is it not?
That's correct, yeah.
And that connects to the lake on the left?
It could go, so it goes through that forest, connects to that lake, and also to Treygood. The river kind of goes over that way and connects to that river right in front of Treygood.
Very good. Jason, which do you want to talk about?
Let's start with the one I spoke about in the last show, and then if we get time to the second one, I'll do one we haven't talked about yet. So yeah, Ilias Dal, and we're gonna, if you could get it, so Ravenyi and Mahiri Devor are both in the picture, because just for a word of explanation, the two are like counterpoint within the nation of Ilias Dal. Mahiri Devor is actually the seat of the ruling god emperor, and the 19 noble families, the ancestral families that rule Ilias Dal. Ravenny, however, is the seat of the imperial bureaucracy that actually runs the country. So when we look at the two cities, Mahiri Devor is basically a pleasure city for the elite of the country. And so you do not see squalor anywhere. The serving class that is in the city are artfully hidden behind facades in their own little places, and everything is really geared towards the palaces of the 19 families that are in Mahiri Devor. There is a pleasure garden, there are zoos, all those sorts of things. I'm pretty sure there's a herd of mutars that are kept in the area as well. But so it is really about art and decadence is what Mahiri Devor is. However, the focus of what I want to talk about in terms of cities is really Ravenny, which is the imperial bureaucracy's seat. Now, one member of the imperial 19 ruling families is always appointed to be the head of the imperial bureaucracy. It is one of the appointed positions, like a quaestor from, if you think Roman times. But the city itself is very geared towards efficiency and operations. So while, yes, it is still very opulent by most standards, it's a very large metropolitan city with suburbs all around it. You see farms, very densely populated with what you would expect from a highly urbanized city of antiquity. Lots of poverty in some areas, but the main focus of the town itself is built around the imperial bureaucracy and is built in many ways out of the very unique pink marble that is common to Ilias Dal. The 5 bastions, the Piety bastions that are along the coast, the roads that we talked about leading away from those, they all lead back to Ravenny. Even though Ravenny is a newer city, whatever was here historically went up to this area and is still in operation, those 5 roads or pathways. Now, those roads are very broken, and that marble, which isn't available any longer, is used in a lot of the construction of the main imperial buildings in Ravenny. And so you'll see that. Lots of stonework in the area around that, even though when you go west of Ravenny, it's lowlands and there's a lot of flooding from seasonal flooding that comes across all the way up to the wood line and past. I picture Holland to some degree. It's very low, lots of flooding seasonally. Because it's a very old nation, there are lots of dikes that lead the way, and roads are all raised to get to Ravenny. And so you don't have flooding that comes all the way to the city, but it is very common around that area. And that affects, to some degree, the architecture. So everything is raised up. It's been built up. It's mainly stone colonnades all over, even though it is built towards the bureaucracy and the operations. Anything you want to do in terms of the taxes, if you're a peasant, building, the imperial academies will be housed in Ravenny as well. It is a seat of learning, among other things, so university, things of that nature. There is a substantial peasant class that lives on the outskirts of the town, which are represented on the map by those smaller villages. So you have a lot of commuting back and forth for work, a lot of industry, and it is, even though it's far from the coastline, a lot of the trade goods ultimately end up in Ravenny before going to the rest of the nation, whether they're exports from Ilias Dal out or imports in. Most of them have to funnel through the hands of the bureaucrats in Ravenny before they can be dispersed throughout the country. So that just gives you the tone and timbre of what the city life is really geared towards and what it's like. So it is a cosmopolitan town to some degree, but Ilias Dal has a really high opinion of itself. It's made up of descendants of what they call themselves the prime elves, the prime eld. So the original elves of the world, whether they truly are or not, doesn't matter. That's what they build themselves out, and they have an attitude to match. So they are very much, let's say, look down on most of the younger races in the world. Now, obviously, the bloodlines of the elves over generations there's been lots of intermarriages, and it's slowly diluted, except for the 19 families, which are very protective of their bloodlines. So you have some cosmopolitan areas. Ravenny, you will see that. You will not see that in Mahiri Devor, however. It is very, very isolated. in terms of its policies. So that's the first city I have for tonight, the capital.
So it's mostly elves, or does it have a kind of a lot of races living there?
You do not have a ton of, in Ravinia, you will have some because you have delegations. If you have diplomats from other nations of any kind, those are going to be in Ravinia. Mahiri Devor, you would not see those. You may see a delegation go up there for a visit, but they would not be invited to stay or have permanent housing in Mahiri Devor where the ruling elite are. Ravinia does have places for essentially, what do you call them? The diplomatic residences would be in Ravinia. So you'll see
Like
other
embassies.
there. Embassies, thank you. Yeah, the embassies would be there. You see some other humans are quite common in the area, but really you see a lot of half elves. That type would be in Ravinia. Would be the most common race that you see in the area.
How long does the ruler stay in power for Ravinia?
Until they're disposed of by the Ever King when he decides that he's done with you, but typically no longer than 19 years. They're very big on numerology.
Apparently. Jeff, got any questions for Jason?
My question was what was John's is about the other races that are in the country or in the city, which he answered.
So
You mentioned trading. What is their imports and exports again?
So the biggest export from Ravinia, the one that's a cash crop, comes from a rare magical flower that grows in the ruins of Serini Ashti, which is the original home of the Iliasdal people. So there's a flower there that has magical properties. It only grows there. That estuary is where if we go back to Zero U, where the disaster occurred, the comet crashed down, the Spear of Dur crashed down and destroyed the city that was there. And up from the ruins grew this magical flower, which has properties that sorcerers, magicians, etc. covet. So they grind it into ink. They can use it for scroll work or tattooing, what have you. And so that is a primary export. They do not allow the raw good to be exported, but they will allow the product to be exported. So the ink that's made from it or the powder that's made for coloring things like paintings, that can be exported. And so that is the primary cash crop. Because of its extremely fertile soil, you also have a fairly significant export of basically agricultural goods that come from the western part of the country. You have tremendous growth of grains and barleys and hops that come from that western part of the country. And so those and the elements that would come along with that would be exported from there as well.
Is there any kind of a magical school? I'm assuming because you mentioned education, so I'm assuming there's a Strixhaven or equivalent.
Yes. Ravinia, again, that would be housed in Ravinia has the university, so that the academy, as it's called, the academy, which would include those components as well.
But they don't let anyone non-elven?
It's not unheard of for folks to visit and participate there, but it's not so much they prohibit folks, it's that no one really wants to be there around them.
Okay.
So
they're too hoity-toity for anyone.
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice to a country I created, but you've got slavers in one and programs going on in another. So they're just obnoxious as all get. This is a really obnoxious country, any way you look at it. They are very hoity-toity, nose in the air. We're better than the whole rest of the world. There are some, in antiquity, there are some countries that have that, that same sense. You can go back through time and look at those, and that's what you see with Iliasdal. They believe they are the rightful rulers of this world, and they have no time or energy to fiddle with the younger races that have come since.
So they're like Texas? That's for Jeff and John.
They do not have a Lone Star on their flag.
Nice. Nicely done. Halfway there, let's move back up to the top. Jeff, what city are we talking about in the slaver world?
We are talking about Logos, which is another port city,
Right there.
and it is right next to Leptis. So Logos, like the three main cities, Ethos, Logos, and Pathos, those were at the beginning were ruled by the sorcerer kings, and so their descendants kind of rule each of those countries or each of those cities. And so Logos says it has a port, uh, mainly for importing and exporting, and then some for the fishing. The city itself is built on is basically a bunch of circles. So the innermost circle is where the royalty is, and then the next circle is your nobles, and then the next circle would be your merchant families, and then the final would be, just your commoners. And so Logos also, one of the things people do is they go here to go underneath the wall to go and explore Leptis. So they have like within the city. They have secret passages underneath the wall to be able to get to the Tusserol wasteland.
How dare you call my place a wasteland?
I know ours is eternal bliss. I mean,
Just because it's deserted and haunted doesn't make it a wasteland.
So was Leptis originally part of the other country, or was it a ruin before then?
It was part of the Drutellus Wastes. That whole area was part of what'd you call it, the Three Kings War or Three Queens War?
Yeah, the what did they call it? The Three Kings. Yeah, the War of the Night Queen and yeah.
Yeah.
So there was before that in Hallow there was a queen that ruled the area over where Paradise is, and they basically attacked and had a big war, and probably the magics was caused or a curse, we don't know, caused the land to go from being plentiful to being a desert.
Yeah, Leptis was nice until his people came in.
And
So-
what year in the common time frame? What year was that in prehistory? 0 year? Or?
Yeah. So zero history would be the fall of the Night Queen and the curse of the land. So the Night Queen was like 200, like P200C is what I put, and then 75 years before year zero was when the Three Kings arrived in Paradise. So as any good city, their primary commodity is slavery. So they sell, they train warriors and sell them, so other countries can to fight. But they also have other slaves, like they have they get them from birth, and so you have the women slaves. They're basically just going to be birthers, and then taking care of them when they're babies and infants, and then the ones that aren't strong enough to be be fighters, then they might make them into manservants and do common tasks. And then, of course, when the women can't bear any kids, then they're let go from their service.
That's a euphemism, right?
That is
let go. They're
But
put
they-
on a farm out in the beautiful wasteland.
Well, what they call it the long walk, and so once a year they take a long walk into the desert.
Not that long.
It sounds like a pretty short walk, honestly, Jeff.
And the other thing too is after you get a certain age, you take a long walk as well. So now, of course, the nobles and the merchants, the merchants will probably just when they get close to that age, they just move to another country, and the nobles, they have the money that they either when they take their long walk, they have people to help them to leave or they leave beforehand. But this is all to kind of keep the population control of the city from not getting too big.
So I just want to know if one of these people were put into the desert and made their way up to John's country to become Pope. You spot a couple burning bushes and have some marauders by a well on the way there, and you've got a mythological story of huge proportions.
What do we? I know he's not coming into mind because I'm filled with Loxodon and water buffalo minotaur. I suppose he could go to the Golden Sea and hang out with Spencer's folks. Send him to Croaky.
Jeff, I think that was the most depressing city story I could imagine. We basically hold people to be birthers, and then when they're too old to have children, we put them into the desert, but we say it nicely. Take them for a long walk.
Well, it's like paradise out there in that desert.
I'm thinking Logan's Run is what it is.
Logan's Run.
That's it, Logan's Run. It's like when you're
35. Wow.
Carousel.
Well, any good campaign milieu has to have some slavers. So Jeff's shouldering the burden by really digging his teeth into the slavery aspect of this.
Are most of the slaves locally, or are they actively getting slaves? That was my other question.
Well, the bad thing is well, not for Paradise, but for some of the other, they do have raiders that come and raid other countries for basically trying to do some interbreeding to make stronger, tougher fighters. So the other part too is Logos. This is going to sound bad, but they
wait for it.
Because so far it's been a picnic.
They kind of have a taste for the buffalo people over next door.
God, I hate you.
I was wondering if their cannibalism was going to be on the menu tonight as well. But
the other one too is they also have they believe like the tusk of the elephants is can have potency and magical in nature. So
you're just hacking on all my people, aren't you?
I know they're not very. So, but they've told the people of Logos that they can't be going over and killing the neighbors. So they told them they can't do that. But
that's why the wall's there, right?
That's why the wall's there.
I'm starting to think that your long walk into the desert is the long walk to Hallow, where they make Soylent Green.
yeah.
Yeah.
So who actually runs Logos?
So it is. Hang on, I got it.
No, we need an answer right now.
I know it's the descendant of Aldrich. And that was the original king, and so it's going to be one of his descendants down the line.
So it is hierarchical.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
And then there's also there's intermixing as far as the different, they'll sit there from ethos, they'll have them marry somebody to help, do the bonds of.
So they're British.
Exactly.
John,
the original slavers.
John, Jason, any questions for Jeff on his paradise?
So what kind of architecture is in Logos? Like what do the buildings look like?
So Logos is kind of going to look like kind of some of the Middle Eastern, with a lot of, because they're basically to make the walls, they're using the sand and the dirt to make the buildings and stuff.
Really thick walls.
Yes, and it's like mud brick. So It's going to be a lot of browns, but then the colors of the different sections. So, like if you're royalty, you'll see purple, and then the merchants they'll have a different color, and they have
Green for money.
Exactly, and they have a bunch of different merchant families. So even though you have the nobles kind of the merchants kind of really run a lot of this stuff, and
Okay.
the nobles just they have money, and they also kind of influence certain merchant families, so they'll do little pacts between the two.
Jason?
I think I asked all of my questions. I am interested in seeing a retirement brochure for those that work in the
Bring your walking shoes. I'm thinking.
running shoes.
John, you're up next. Let's buzz across Wyvern Pass and talk about Jubilor. Which city you want to talk about?
All right, I'm going to talk about the village of Unity. So, this village is located in between the forests and the swampy area. And the Unity was the site of Unification Day, which was when the elves and God, I can't believe I can't remember what I'm talking about. The lizard folk, the elves and the lizard folk had a pact to fight off the Sahagin that were invading. So they signed a treaty to help work together to defend the country, and that was where that happened. And so around that area became like an important site for both the culture of the city, not the culture of the country, and also as a trading post between the lizard folk and the elves, and they would come there to trade. And so eventually it grew up into a little village. Not sure if I mentioned this or not, but there's Unification Day is sort of like their Independence Day. They have fireworks, and they have big feasts, and the kids dress up as Sahagin and run around and terrorize people in order to get treats. So it's like a Halloween mixed with Thanksgiving, mixed with the 4th of July. And yeah, so it's basically it's about 30 or 40% elf, maybe 10% other, and then the rest are lizard folk. And so there is a governor there, and he is one of the scouts of from the Jubilor scouting group that was the ones that kind of helped work with the lizard folk during that day. And he's a very fair governor. Basically they try to keep everybody happy, and actually provide an actual just government, as opposed to Darkwood, which is very corrupt. And there's a lot of trade that flows through there. Some of the stuff from Silverton winds its way through Unity to get back toward Mirthwall. Some of it goes down the river toward the halflings. So, it just depends on where they're trying to sell it. And there's a lot of course, they have a strong sense of conservation, because the elves and the lizard folk want to keep the nature kind of clean and not destroy it. So there's a lot of conservation of natural resources, and they try to do that. Most of the town's built up on stilts, and they're like usually wood floors, wood poles that keep the thing up, and then maybe reeds and stuff for the roofs. Um, that's about all I have on that one.
Who runs Unity?
I had it written down. I don't know if I still have. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Maybe I can answer a different question while I'm looking that up. Has anybody got a different one?
What's the size in terms of like population? How many people have permanent part of the settlement, or how many different sentient species?
I would say not too many, maybe 25,000 at the most. It's probably less than that.
So fairly sizable village, but
yeah, it's a big village, but it's not, it's definitely not a city, or it really shouldn't really be a city. It's like, or if it is, it's a pretty small one.
You need to come over to Shar Curry. That place is huge. I think mine top out at 2,000.
Oh wow.
Well,
maybe my numbers
city-state,
maybe too high.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I'm city-state material.
Yeah. I haven't actually drawn it out or anything, so I don't have a.
I was trying to picture again, population density, how many folks are mixing in there in terms of village versus town versus city kind of thing. And in terms of the structures as well, if you were wandering around, if you're looking at the aspects of the city, the makeup of the city in terms of tradesmen, variety, et cetera, does it speak towards more single story buildings? You said a lot more on pylons, limited number of tradesmen. If I wanted something, a specialty item, I probably couldn't find it there. I'd have to go somewhere else.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not going to have a lot of specialty goods. There'll be a general store, but it's going to have a limited supply of goods. They don't have like any place like specialty magic shops or anything like that. If anybody has magic on them, it's just going to be, hey, I got this thing on the side. I found it. You really wouldn't be able to find any consistency, any type of magic. You might, find a couple of people, like maybe someone who sells potions on the side, but they have other business. Yeah, they have like 1 or 2 potions for sale or something like that. I wrote it down here. What was this? See, the governor.
Governor.
Oh man. Okay, so I had totally wrong. The governor of Unity is a wood elf woman named Sylvan Lalvenmus. I can't pronounce it.
Common spelling.
They call her Governor Silde.
Nice.
And she took the post 20 years ago, and she is 150 years old.
Nice.
But she is, everything else I said was right. She's a real fair governor and tries to keep things on the up and up.
Cool beans.
Do they sell chicken? Meat that tastes like chicken?
Like lizards?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they eat actual lizards. The lizard folk would eat whatever, So, but not lizard folk.
Desperate times.
I hear Logos has some product that they will sell you that tastes like chicken.
Probably.
It's very athletic from a long walk.
It's a little dried out, kind of gamey.
Kind of like beef jerky.
Wow. Jason, take us home tonight. Which one do you want to talk about?
So all the way to the south and west, that little peninsula that goes all the way down south of the Croaky folks. Or is that it? No, that's it.
That's
it's David.
It's this one.
It's that one right there. Yeah, with the swamp, the jungle that turns to swamp. So this is the nation of Myriad, and just the explanation for the city has to come from the background of the country. So Myriad was formed from what is known as the Summa, which is the Great Migration south that led 0 year, all the various races and peoples that were displaced during 0 year and who never landed somewhere else, gathered together and kept migrating, thrown out of whatever was being formed elsewhere, and they all ended up in Myriad, this little isthmus that goes out here at the very edge of the continent. And when they arrived in this area, they quickly formed 5 cities and began building them. However, at the end of the first year, 3 of the cities had the populations mysteriously disappeared.
Jeff.
The jungle was very inhospitable. I think slavers may have been surfing the area. Now, in hindsight, it was entirely different in my mind, but maybe it was slavers in reality. So that forced a lot of the remaining survivors of those nights ended up forming what amounted to a barge community. So family units began building barges and living more in the swamp area, canal rivulets that surround that area as it gets to the coast and along the coastal area. So canal barges and flat bottom barges became the norm. That's where most of them lived. However, they built one city on the very edge of the jungle in the near where the swamp and the jungle come together on the beach. Yep, down in that area. They built one city known as Solon Opidium. And it's by comparison to some of the others, it'd be more like what Frank said his cities. We're talking less than 2,000 residents at any one time in this area. In this, the largest and really the only what would qualify as a town or city in this area. Those residents, however, are mostly made up of foreign travelers who are there to get the various exotic goods and to take forays into the jungle. The jungle is called the Beautiful Garden, but it's a misnomer because it is a deadly place. And so folks go in there to get the various furs and exotic fruits and things that are in there. And the people of Myriad, known as the Rana Day, will go in there during the day, only in daylight, to gather goods and bring it back to the beach where they then sell it to the traders. The city itself is primarily sand and dirt, earth. However, in terms of roadways, etc. However, there is one area sort of centrally located. There's very little stone that comes out of the jungle. So everything's made of wood that's readily available. They have one stone structure in the middle that is the private office of whoever is the current leader of the Rana Day at the time. That person is housed there, and meetings of the Rana Day captains, which are the heads of the families, heads of the various barges within the nation, will meet there annually to deal with issues. No foreigners allowed in the building. You have the stone building on the inside. You have a palisade that's like 15-meter high wooden palisade that circles from the beach on both sides, goes across the jungle. And it's topped with sharp pointed stakes at the top of the palisade. And there's a big gate that then leads into the jungle at the entrance to the palisade. Just outside the palisade, there's another stone structure, a small one, with a platform on top of it and an odd pyramidal structure that's also in the jungle. Those are the only stone structures that are really in this area. Everything else would be wood, many of them up on platforms and then built for potential flooding, et cetera, storms. Because this is a jungle and swamp area, rot is very common, so they're constantly trying to maintain the wood structures in this area. There is very little metal in this area. What metal they have has primarily been brought in or traded in, so you don't see a lot of metal throughout the city either. You see, again, primarily wood. You see coral because there's a large coral reef off one side of the coast. And so you'll see some harvesting of coral. You see seashells. You see shells from large maritime creatures that they pull out. The stone itself, if anyone's familiar with the fingerlings, which are to the north, the stone structures look like they were built with the same stone that the fingerlings are, sort of a dark basalt sort of looking stone. And so that is the town of Solon Opidium in the nation of Myriad. Very unique. The population here is really mixed. All races, all species of sentient creatures can be found here among the families.
Any ruins from the cities who lost their population?
So 3 of the 5 early ones still have some partial ruins are left in there. Again, a lot of this was wood-based, and so it's rotted away, but you have some foundations that were built. There are rumors of stone ruins deep within the jungle, but the various creatures in the jungle really make it difficult for anyone to venture that far in unless they are particularly tough. And whatever happened to the original population is still unknown.
Jeff.
They just disappeared.
Did they? I'm sorry. Did they? Do they still have the like floating city parts?
Yes, they still, the majority of the population are still on barges that do move, but are primarily along the coast and within the swamp area. So that's
And
where the majority of the population is.
whenever someone wants to go to the neighbors, do they knock or do they barge right in?
I think they play a banjo, don't they?
Sorry,
You sure do
I'm
got
bad.
pretty teeth.
They throw the anchor onto the other person's barge and just kind of
There you
reel
go.
it in.
Pull it in.
Yeah, a fishing pole. Just reel it over.
I was thinking of like, I don't know, like where some of the movies where you see them jumping around from boat to boat in places like, I don't know, Hong Kong and whatnot.
Yep.
I
The
can see
port
that.
area outside of the town is often has multiple families will be there at one time, but the rest are in constant motion along the coastline. And they do trading up the coast as well,
Cool.
since they are primarily a sea born nation. But
pretty.
when I picture the stockade that is around the city, I always picture that scene in the original, like 1929 King Kong. That's
Yes,
the image I always have.
that was one of my other questions I was going to ask.
Nice.
Are there giant apes in the don't know. I haven't seen them.
I'm thinking
Cool.
pelts and claws as exports. They all belong in a museum. Jeff, any questions for Jason?
I do. So the two stone structures, those were there before the people came.
So they have been there a long time, and so it's not clear if the original survivors have ended up building those or if they were there already. It's not clear at this point. The palisade was clearly built by the survivors of the original settlements.
Thanks.
There's the stones of that one next to the gate, like stained with blood or anything like that.
They definitely look sticky.
Nice. Any other questions for Jason? Folks, this has been Murder Hobo Inc., the Socium Project. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we enjoy showing off our work on this project. We really are super behind this, and it's really a shame that Socium only lasts an hour because, as you can tell, these guys can talk about their cities all night long, and that's the beauty of this project. So hopefully you've gleaned a few ideas for your at-home world building, or you just are waiting for December when we go ahead and play in Socium. A lot of possibilities, and it's going to be super. Thank you, Jeff, John, and Jason for being on here. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. If you want to shoot the shit about D&D, join our Discord. If you're needing some RPG swag, links down there. If you need some new math rocks, at Pirate Dog Dice at Twitter. And if your game stinks, unlike ours smells like success, try some Adventure Sense by oddfishgames.com. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. I don't know what the hell's going on. This is 2 shows in a row, so I'll try and get my shite together by Thursday when we play Cacophony. This Saturday, another one-shot. It's going to be Urban. We're going to go Urban Outfitters. You know me and Urban. We have a lot of good fun. Folks, for all of us here at Murder Hobo Inc., thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of the week. Hopefully see you on Thursday. Big kiss and wave time, boys. Mwah! Bye, everybody. And I screwed up all my cues. Damn it. Here's an ad.